Hey everyone, Joe Brady here. We're about to embark on a series of videos that show the use of Speedlight flashes for creating portraits. And this is brought to you by our friends at Nissin. Now, before we get started with actually shooting, I want to go over some of the gear that we're going to use through the series and how it works. I'll show you some details through the series of things happening, but I just want to give you an overview. The system we're going to be using is the Nissin Air system, and it features 3 different flashes, 1 controller and 1 receiver that are available as part of what we're going to use. Now this is the Air 1 Commander. This is kind of the brains of the outfit. This is the part that sits on top of the camera. The thing I absolutely love about this controller is it is so intuitive. It is so simple to use, and you'll see it as we go a little bit deeper how it works. One of the primary flashes I'm using is the Nissin DI700. And again, just a really good workhorse kind of flash. You can use it on camera or off camera. It does full TTL sync with all of the major manufacturers. You can do manual. It's got custom zoom settings. Again, very simple to understand. No complicated settings, no complicated slave master connections. You just really get to use it right away. So the DI700 and the Air 1 Commander makes a great kit for an amazing price. For what this does, really my favorite bang for the buck Speedlight out there. Another flash we'll take a look at is the i60A, and it's a little bit smaller than the DI700. You can see them here next to each other. A little bit smaller, actually as powerful, even slightly more powerful. And one of the advantages to this is, for those of you that want to use a flash on the camera, it is somewhat lower, so it does take up less room, particularly if you're using one of the smaller mirrorless cameras. Might be a little less obtrusive for when you're walking around shooting flash on camera. If you're shooting off camera, then 6 1/2 dozen of the other. Now, both of these units have built-in receivers for the Air 1 Commander. Once you bind them to them, which just takes 3 seconds, then you can control them both from the Commander on top of your camera. Now, the third flash we're going to use is this little guy. This is the Nissin i40. And again, just to kind of compare it, here it is against the DI700 and against the i60. You can see it's a little smaller flash. It's small but mighty. This is a great little unit. Now this unit does not have a receiver built inside it. It is a full manual NTTL flash like the others, but it doesn't have the radio system built into it like the others. However, that doesn't mean you can't use it as a radio system. To do that, you need to add this little device called the Air R. This allows you to take any compatible flash with the system you're using. You just put your flash on the top of the receiver. You can set your channels, you can set your zones A, B, and C. And then what you do is you set the flash in TTL. And even if you're going to be using manual, that's okay. The flash stays in TTL, and then the function of manual versus TTL gets changed from the Commander. So now these can talk to each other. Now, all of these flashes also have something I find incredibly useful, and particularly if you want to use your flashes with maybe a different system. Maybe you have some other system, maybe you have studio lights that you'd like to incorporate these flashes into. All of these flashes have a slave mode. In fact, they have 2 slave modes, and what that means is they'll just fire when they see another light. Well, how handy is that? Let's say you have some kind of studio lights, and you want to use one of these small lights kind of as an unobtrusive, maybe a hair light. You want to put it up and above your subject, and you just want it to fire at a certain power all the time when it sees another flash. Now, for most systems, what you have to do is either get a radio trigger to plug into it, or you need to buy an optical trigger, which, by the way, is one thing that fails faster than anything else I've ever come across. Well, what they've done is they've included that trigger in these flashes. And what's really cool, I don't know how they figured this out, is there are 2 modes. There's a slave film and a slave digital. Now, they're not really meant for film versus digital. Here's what happens. If you have it set for slave film, when the flash sees another flash fire, it simply fires. It sees a flash from wherever, this flash fires. Slave digital, what it does is it expects that this is a TTL signal. And one of the things about TTL is the way it works, a TTL flash sends out a pre-flash so that the camera can measure the exposure, and then it sends out the full flash. Now this happens all in a fraction of a second, but another flash or another optical trigger would see that pre-flash and fire, and then what would happen would be, if you're shooting in TTL, your other flash would be wrong timing-wise. It would fire before the main pulse of the TTL flash. When you set this to slave digital, what it does is it ignores that first pulse and then fires with the main flash. Really great if you have some other TTL flash system, but you need to incorporate another flash to fire with your TTL. Where might you use this? Well, maybe you're doing 1 or 2 light portraits with some kind of TTL system, but you want a hair light or a background light that's going to be a constant. You want that light to be in manual. You don't want it constantly adjusting. Once you find the correct power for it, it needs to stay there. Well, that's what this allows you to do. Put it on your slave digital, pick your power setting, set up your flash, take a test shot, and you're done. Every time your TTL system fires, it will fire correctly on a straight manual setting, regardless of whether your other flashes are TTL or manual. I don't often get gushy about gear, but there are a handful of things that I really love, and this has quickly become my favorite flash system. I've used a lot of different flashes. I've even shot some videos on using some of them, but the way this controller works, the analog nature of the display, the instant feedback you get, it is so intuitive, it is so easy to use. I promise you, once you start using it, you will agree. It's really the most flexible, easy to use system I've ever used. So let's put it to work and create some great portraits.